My parents gave their entire inheritance to my sister, whom they always favored. But 5 years later, they showed up on my doorstep wanting to see their grandkids because she's infertile. So I answered them. Hi. I'm Liam. I had just started my adult life when this whole story started. Fresh out of college, landed my first real job in marketing, and finally moved into my own apartment. It's nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom place with questionable water pressure and a temperamental radiator, but it's mine, and that means something. My family is what you might call traditional. There's my older sister Lucy, who's 29, married to Sam, and they have 2 kids. Mom and Dad still live in the house where we grew up, and every Saturday, like some unbreakable ritual, we all gather there for dinner. Lucy just closed another major deal at work, Dad would announce, beaming with pride while passing the mashed potatoes. Third one this quarter. Mom would chime in, that's our girl, always knew she had it in her. Then she'd turn to Sam, my sister's husband, with that adoring look she seemed to reserve just for him. And Sam, darling, that suit is absolutely stunning. You always know exactly what to wear. I'd sit there pushing food around my plate while Sam would give me one of his looks. You know, the kind that makes you feel like you're wearing a trash bag to a black tie event. He has this way of looking down his nose at me even though we're the same height. These dinners were like watching a play where everyone had their parts down pat. Dad would brag about Lucy's latest achievement, Mom would gush over Sam's newest accomplishment, and the kids would run around making noise that nobody seemed to mind. Meanwhile, I'd sit there feeling more like a prop than a person. Sam's organizing another charity gala. Mom announced at one of these dinners, pride dripping from every word. He's become such a pillar of the community. Like the son I never had. I nearly choked on my wine at that one. The son she never had? I was sitting right there, but somehow I might as well have been invisible. Sam shot me another one of his condescending looks, probably noticing how my cologne wasn't designer brand or whatever else he found lacking about me that day. It was during one of these typical Saturday dinners that everything changed. The roast was done, the kids were actually sitting still for once, and the usual chorus of Lucy's praises had just died down. That's when Mom and Dad exchanged one of those looks, you know, the kind parents give each other when they're about to make some big announcement. We have something important to tell you all, Dad said, clearing his throat. He looked at Mom, who nodded encouragingly. Your father and I have been thinking, Mom began, smoothing her napkin in that nervous way she has. We've finally made our will. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Sam straightened in his chair, and Lucy stopped mid-sip of her water. We've decided, Dad continued, his voice firm and decisive, to leave everything to Lucy, the house, the cottage up at the lake, all our savings. I sat there, staring at my half-eaten dinner, while my brain tried to process what I'd just heard. Everything. They were leaving everything to Lucy. We've given this a lot of thought, Mom continued, her voice taking on that practical tone she uses when she thinks she's being perfectly reasonable. Lucy has 2 children to think about. They need a stable foundation for their future. I found my voice somewhere between the shock and the hurt. And what about my future? The words came out quieter than I intended, but they still seemed to echo around the dining room. I'll have my own family too, you know. I'll have children someday. Mom's face did that thing it does when she thinks I'm being difficult, a slight tightening around the eyes, a small downturn of the lips. Liam, dear, this decision is final. Your father and I won't be changing the will. That's when it hit me. Like a tidal wave of memories crashing over my head, drowning me in years of realization. This wasn't about Lucy's kids. It was never about her kids, or the family name, or any of that. This was about Lucy. It had always been about Lucy. Suddenly, I was 8 years old again, sitting in the school auditorium during my piano recital, staring at 2 empty seats in the parent section because Lucy had a soccer game that day. I was 12, proudly holding up my straight A report card at the dinner table while Mom and Dad fawned over Lucy's B+ in chemistry because she tried so hard. I was 15, crying in my room after my first breakup, while Mom was downstairs helping Lucy pick out the perfect boutonniere for her boyfriend. 16, winning the school's writing competition, but nobody came to the ceremony because Lucy had a college graduation that day. 18. Giving my valedictorian speech to an audience where my parents arrived late and left early because Lucy needed help moving into her new apartment. All those moments started connecting like dots, forming a picture I'd never wanted to see. You've always loved her more than me, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. The table went silent. Even the kids stopped fidgeting with their desserts. This isn't about her children or her future. This is about you picking your favorite child. Again, Mom's face went pale. Liam, that's ridiculous. We love both our children equally. When? I demanded. When have you ever shown that? Name one time you chose me over her. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, probably trying to come up with examples, but I knew they couldn't. There weren't any. I'm done, I said, pushing my chair back from the table. I'm done pretending we're this perfect family where everyone is loved equally. I'm done trying to earn the attention you've always given her freely. I'm done with all of it. Don't expect me to come to any more family dinner. Don't expect me to keep playing this role of the grateful second best child. You're being selfish, Liam, Mom snapped, her face flushing with anger. And mercenary. Is that all you care about? Money? This isn't about money, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. This is about respect. You've made it crystal clear that you don't consider me your son. And you expect me to keep showing up with a smile, pretending everything's fine? Lucy sat there in uncomfortable silence, staring at her plate like it held all the answers to this mess. But of course, Sam couldn't keep quiet. You're being ridiculous, Liam, he said in that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. Everything about this is perfectly fair. You're just being moody and arrogant, as usual, always making everything about yourself. Something inside me snapped. All those years of taking his subtle jabs, his superior smirks, his backhanded compliments, I was done. I turned to him, feeling a strange calm wash over me. You know what, Sam? Stay out of this. You're not even really family, you're just someone who married in and thinks that gives you the right to judge everyone else. This is between me and my parents. The dining room went dead silent. Sam's face crumpled, and right on cue, the waterworks started. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs that sounded about as genuine as his designer knockoff watches. How dare you speak to Sam that way? Mom exploded, jumping to her feet. He's been nothing but kind to you. Dad's face had turned that dangerous shade of red I remembered from childhood punishments. Get out, he growled, get out of this house right now. Gladly, I said, standing up. Don't worry, it'll be the last time you have to throw me out. I won't be coming back. I walked out of that house without looking back. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. That was the last time I saw any of them. 2 years passed in what felt like a blink. I met Jamie at a coffee shop. She was the woman who accidentally took my black coffee, and we ended up talking for hours. She was different from anyone I'd ever known. She actually listened when I talked, really listened. When we got married, it was exactly the wedding I wanted. Small, intimate, filled with Jamie's wonderful family and our closest friends. No drama, no tension, no having to pretend. Jamie's mom helped me pick out my suit, and her sister was my best woman. It felt more like family than anything I'd experienced in years. I didn't send invitations to my parents or Lucy and Sam. Some of our relatives tried to convince me otherwise, telling me I'd regret it, that it was my wedding day after all. But I knew I'd made the right choice when I walked down the aisle and saw nothing but genuine smiles and happy tears. A year after the wedding, we were blessed with twins, a boy and a girl. The pregnancy wasn't easy, but she faced every moment bravely, the cravings, the midnight panics about whether we'd be good parents. When the babies arrived, we made the decision together that I would stay home with them. My marketing career could wait, these precious early years couldn't. My twins were growing fast, turning our quiet house into a playground filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Life had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, play dates, preschool drop-offs, afternoon naps, and bedtime stories. I'd managed to create my own little bubble, carefully curated to keep the past where it belonged. I stayed in touch with a few relatives, the ones who understood my boundaries and respected them. Aunt Marie would come over for Sunday brunches, Uncle Pete would visit during holidays. They never pushed me about my parents or Lucy, and I never asked. When there were family gatherings, weddings, anniversaries, reunions, I'd politely decline if I knew my parents would be there. Sometimes I'd host small get-togethers at our house instead, where I could control who walked through my door. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. That Tuesday started like any other. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after breakfast, while the kids were in the living room working on their latest masterpieces with crayons. The doorbell rang, and I assumed it was the Amazon delivery I'd been expecting. Instead, I opened the door to find my parents standing there. Liam, Mom said, her voice wavering, we've missed you so much. I gripped the doorframe, my knuckles turning white. Someone must have given them my address, probably Cousin Rachel. She'd been hinting at family reconciliation during her last visit. We want to see our grandchildren, Dad added, trying to peek past me into the house. We've waited so long. I found my voice surprisingly steady. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to show up on my doorstep after 7 years of silence and expect to walk into my life, into my children's lives. They exchanged a look, that same look they'd shared at that last dinner 5 years ago. Something was off, I could feel it. Why are you really here? I asked, crossing my arms. Why now, after all this time? They hesitated. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dad shifted uncomfortably on his feet, looking everywhere but at me. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Something's happened, Liam. The truth came out about Sam. He's been unfaithful to Lucy. For years, apparently. Mom's tears were flowing freely now. Lucy and Sam had been struggling to conceive for years. During her fertility testing, they discovered she was infertile. Shortly after, she found him with someone else. In her anger and suspicion, she had the children tested, Liam. The DNA results, she choked back a sob. Neither of them are hers. The world seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. I remembered those kids, the ones my parents had doted on, the ones who'd been used as proof of Lucy's superiority, the ones who'd been part of the reason I'd been written out of the will. The perfect grandchildren who weren't actually related to us at all. Mom wasn't finished. There's more, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The fertility clinic confirmed it. She can never have children of her own. I stood there in my doorway trying to process this information while the sounds of my own children playing drifted from the living room. The irony wasn't lost on me. The golden child, the daughter who could do no wrong, would never have biological children of her own. Those children, Dad said, his voice hardening, they're not our grandchildren. Never were. They're just strangers. But you're twins, they're our true grandchildren. Our real blood. They're our only chance now at having proper grandchildren. I felt physically sick. For 10 years, these people had been grandparents to those kids. They'd attended every birthday party, bought every Christmas present, plastered their social media with proud photos. And now they were just erasing them? Like they never existed? Do you even hear yourselves? My voice came out sharp, cutting. Those children love you. They call you Grandma and Grandpa. They didn't do anything wrong. How can you just stop loving them because of a DNA test? But they're not family, Mom repeated, as if that explained everything. Your children, though, they're our real family. I stepped back, out of her reach. Get out of my house, and don't come back. My children don't need grandparents who can turn their love on and off like a faucet. You can't do this to us, Dad started, but I cut him off. Watch me. I closed the door in their faces, locked it, and leaned against it until I heard their footsteps retreat down the porch steps. Once they were gone, I grabbed my phone and pulled up Mom's Facebook page, something I hadn't done in years. The change was stark. Every photo of Lucy's kids had vanished, every proud grandma post deleted. 10 years of memories, of birthday parties and Christmas mornings, all erased with a few clicks. I was still staring at the screen when Jamie came home that evening. She found me sitting at the kitchen table, the kids already in bed, a cold cup of coffee in front of me. Rough day? She asked, kissing the top of my head. I told her everything, the visit, the revelation about Lucy, my parents' casual disposal of 2 innocent children, their sudden interest in our kids. When I finished, I looked up at her, half expecting her to suggest giving them another chance, to say something about family being family. Instead, she pulled me into a tight hug. You did the right thing, she said firmly. Those kids of Lucy's deserved better grandparents, and our kids deserve better too. I'm with you on this, 100%. But they just wouldn't stop. Every few days, I'd find packages on our porch, expensive toys, designer clothes for the twins, even a pair of matching iPads. Since they were still toddlers, it was easy to intercept these deliveries and donate everything to the local children's shelter. But the gifts were just the beginning. One Tuesday morning, I spotted Mom's car idling across the street from the kindergarten. 2 days later, there was Dad pretending to read a newspaper on a bench near the playground. They never approached us directly, just watched from a distance, like stalkers in a bad movie. It was creepy and exhausting, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering where they'd pop up next. I started varying our routes to school, taking different streets each day, but they always seemed to find us. Enough is enough, I told Jamie one evening after another gift delivery. I opened my laptop and started typing an email. Mom and Dad, your behavior has become harassment. The gifts, the stalking near the kindergarten, it needs to stop. I've made my position clear. If you continue showing up uninvited around my family, I will have no choice but to involve the police. This is your only warning. Liam. The response came within minutes, not via email, but through a barrage of text messages from Mom. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. Don't you understand we might not have much time left? All we want is to know our grandchildren before it's too late. What kind of son threatens his elderly parents with the police? I blocked her number, but then Dad's messages started coming in. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. We're not criminals, we're family. Think about what you're doing to us in our final years. I was about to block his number too when one last message came through, this one longer than the others. We've been thinking, Liam. If you let us see the children, we'll change our will. Everything will go to you, the house, the lake cottage, all of it. You were right before. We'll make it right. Just let us be grandparents to your children. I stared at the message, feeling a mix of disgust and pity turning in my stomach. They still didn't get it. After everything that had happened, they still thought they could buy their way into my life, into my children's lives. And Lucy, my God, Lucy. The sister who'd lost everything, her husband, her children, her future as a mother, and now our parents were ready to take away her inheritance too. Just because she no longer fit their perfect family narrative? I thought about those family dinners years ago, how they'd praised her endlessly, how proud they'd been of her perfect life. But the moment that perfection cracked, the moment she became human and flawed and hurting, they were ready to toss her aside like she meant nothing. That night, after the kids were asleep, Jamie and I sat at our kitchen table, 2 cups of tea growing cold between us as we talked through everything. "It's not just about the will," I said, running my finger around the rim of my mug. "If we let them in now, if we accept this deal, they'll hold it over our heads forever." Jamie nodded, her face serious in the dim kitchen light. "They'd always have that power over us. Today it's let us see the kids and get the inheritance. Tomorrow it could be raise them this way or lose everything." The decision, when we finally made it, felt like setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. I blocked their numbers on my phone, blocked their emails, unfriended and blocked them on every social media platform. For a while, they tried to find ways around the blockade. Letters started showing up in our mailbox. Once, Mom even tried to reach me through my work email. But eventually, like a storm running out of rain, their attempts gradually tapered off into silence. Life went on. The twins started school. Jamie got a promotion. I started freelancing from home during nap times. We were happy, truly happy, in our quiet, drama-free bubble. Then, on a random Tuesday morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Liam," the voice on the other end was hesitant, familiar yet strange. "It's Lucy. Can we meet somewhere? Maybe grab a coffee?" We agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown. Walking in, I almost didn't recognize her. The perfectly polished sister from my memories was gone, replaced by someone who looked human, tired, real. We sat in silence for a moment, both cradling our coffee cups like shields. "I'm sorry," she finally said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "For everything, for how they always favored me. For not standing up for you. For being part of the problem for so long." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. "I'm not talking to them anymore either," she continued, staring into her coffee. "I cut them off after I found out they wanted to rewrite the will and disinherit me. It's not even about the money, it's how quickly they were ready to throw me away. 35 years of being their daughter, and they could just erase me like that." Lucy wrapped her hands tighter around her coffee cup, her knuckles turning white. "The last time I went to their house." She paused, swallowing hard. "All the photos were gone. Every single one. The walls were bare where pictures of the kids used to hang. The shelves where Mom kept all those framed photos of birthdays and Christmases, empty." I felt a chill run through me, remembering those carefully arranged photo displays, how Mom used to spend hours getting them just right. "I asked her about it," Lucy continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "And she told me she burned them all in the fireplace. Like she was talking about getting rid of old newspapers or something. Those were 10 years of memories, first steps, first words, first everything, and she just burned them." She looked up at me and I saw real pain in her eyes. "I hadn't even filed for divorce yet, Liam. The ink wasn't dry on the DNA tests and she'd already erased them. 10 years of being the perfect grandmother, and she could just pretend none of it ever happened. Like those kids never existed. Like they never meant anything to her at all." I thought about all those Facebook posts she'd deleted, but somehow, burning physical photos seemed even more deliberate, more final. "The will," she shrugged, trying to appear casual, but I could see the hurt beneath. "I don't care about it anymore. They can leave everything to a cat shelter for all I care. What I needed was their support. Just their presence, their love. Wasn't that supposed to be unconditional?" Looking at her now, I saw something I'd never seen before. My sister, stripped of all the golden child armor, just being real. No pretense, no perfect family image to maintain. Just a hurt daughter trying to make sense of parents who could only love on their own rigid terms. "You know what's funny?" she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I finally understand what you went through all those years, what it feels like to be on the outside. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Sitting there in that cafe, listening to my sister speak with such raw honesty, I felt something shift between us. The wall of privilege and favoritism that had separated us since childhood was crumbling. Maybe there was hope for a real relationship here, not the artificial one our parents had created with their constant comparisons, but something authentic. It won't happen overnight. Too much water under that bridge for instant friendship. But this conversation feels like a first step, a tiny seedling of possibility. As for Mom and Dad, I sometimes lie awake at night thinking about how they ended up alone. No children visiting for Sunday dinners, no grandchildren's laughter filling their house. Sometimes I feel guilty wondering if I'm punishing them too harshly. But then I remember the burned photos, the deleted memories, the way they could switch their love on and off like a light switch, and I know I'm protecting my children from that same conditional love. Maybe someday they'll understand what they've done. Maybe they'll realize that real family isn't about perfect appearances or meeting impossible standards. Maybe they'll learn that love shouldn't come with conditions or be revoked when things get messy. But I'm not holding my breath. Instead, I focus on my own family. On Jamie, who loves without keeping score. On my twins, who I promise to love unconditionally, no matter what paths they choose in life. On building the kind of home where memories aren't burned when they become inconvenient, where love isn't used as a bargaining chip, where everyone is seen and valued for exactly who they are. And maybe, just maybe, there's room in that home for a reformed golden child who's finally learning what real family means.